And in terms of where do I see capital, moving towards longevity right now, I mean, as we know, the longevity industry has been growing extremely quickly. And the wellness industry alone, I think it's trillion
I
now.
think it's trillion. Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
growing in an insane pace. And I work in both wellness and longevity, it's an industry that I think capital is only catching up with now. And I
Okay.
say that because most of the longevity investors that I knew or know from a few years back were mainly investing into biotech.
Right.
So this is a mix of, for those who don't know, science, technology, and AI based companies that were really serving a deep core question. So it could be, I don't know, research on cancer or Alzheimer's or genomics or things like that, which we now see expanding. And the science coming closer to the consumer, and more investors are actually understanding that this is where the opportunity is today.
Hi, welcome to this week's episode of Connecting the Dots. I'm so happy to be joined by Ekatherina to connect the dots between capital and longevity, and to make the case that the way we treat our health is the ultimate compounding strategy. Her career runs from structuring debt for high growth companies across Africa to building one of Europe's first and most complete performance and longevity hubs from the ground up. Ekatherina brings a finance lens into the wellness world, which is a welcome perspective. And today we're going to explore what capital sees in longevity right now, and where the real opportunities sit for founders and operators, and why so many good products fail without the right ecosystem around them, and what good looks like. Welcome, Ekatherina.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'm very excited about this conversation ever since we met. So connect the dots for me and for our listeners. How did you get from impact finance in Africa to the frontier of longevity?
Absolutely. Well, my career started in traditional finance and asset management back in Canada. And like many of us, we start to follow the traditional path. I'm actually based in Switzerland now. And when I came here, I studied international relations, and I saw the extreme value of finance and the flows of capital and how they can provide resources to underserved ecosystems. And so for me, it was really about how can we provide the foundational requirements for entrepreneurs to thrive and for great ideas to come to life. And that was my really important pursuit of how I got into impact finance. And as I was in impact finance, traveling around Africa and emerging markets, I saw how the different impacts of what's happening in emerging markets actually exasperates a founder's experience, of course, with things they can't control, from risk averse mentality of family members, demonetization of currencies, whether it's natural disasters, things that we here maybe in the Western world don't really appreciate, that is actually also faced by many founders. And so seeing this, as well as going through my own health challenges over a period of 5 years, I understood that while finance is a really foundational element of an entrepreneur's, longevity, let's say, and a business's longevity, health is actually even more foundational. And if we can position ourselves and our business in a way that we focus on investing in our own health and longevity, our business and our entire world around us will thrive.
I love that this is a connection point for you, because it is so important. Like, how you show up as a human has a huge downstream effect on your business, and it's not pushing harder necessarily makes the better result, because if you don't land in a place where your health is good and you're sustainable as a human, then what have you actually created? So we don't talk about it enough, because I think of hustle culture.
I was just going to comment on that and say, I think we're slowly transitioning out of this hustle culture, thankfully, because I do feel like growing up in the North America and the West, we've really put on a pedestal the founders that are able to stay up 18 hours for 3 years straight. But there's cause and effect, right? There's a consequence to every action. If you really think that this is sustainable in the long run, you have to look at what your decision quality is like. What is your business and your team? What do they look like? How do they function, right? And it is a downstream effect. So now we're finally seeing this change a little bit, and people are investing in themselves so that they can invest in their business.
Yes, I'm absolutely here for I'm here for this. Please, please more. So your own turning point, your career turning point was actually linked to your health. So that's why this is an important dot for you. So can you share a little bit about what you went through and what shaped your thinking, what changes you made, what things you tried?
Yes, absolutely. So, as most of us do, we have to learn how to take care of our body and take care of ourselves. And I was a high functioning young person trying to achieve a lot. And over time, the stress that I placed on myself burnt out my body. And at the same
Mhm.
time, years of, I would say, poor nutrition and poor mental mindset habits actually came to the forefront of my health. And I was forced to deal with things like digestive health issues, hormonal health issues, and a whole set of downstream effects, which were extremely debilitating. And as many people know, when you're dealing with something that now I'm able to name and say it was digestive, it was hormonal, at the time, you have no idea what you're looking
Right.
at. You're looking at symptoms where you don't recognize yourself. And I had, a slew of hormonal acne that I had never faced before. I was extremely irritable. I couldn't eat without having pain in my stomach, which many of us know now as
Yeah.
irritable bowel syndrome or leaky gut. And many people do face this, but without understanding what it is. So I'm blessed. I'm in Switzerland. I have fantastic access to healthcare. And yet still, I had to dive really deep into understanding what I was dealing with, because every single doctor practitioner is giving you a different answer, is giving you a different diagnosis, a different analysis. And you realize you're no further than when you started to try and understand what's going on. And after 1 year or 1 year and a half of this happening, it's extremely difficult because you are not advancing and improving your health. So for
And the
me,
symptoms are still there, right?
and the symptoms are still there, and the
Yeah.
symptoms are still there, and you're not able to. And so for me, when I was dealing with that, I was really kind of understanding that, wow, I'm so motivated and passionate and ambitious about improving the world, having an impact, traveling to these places and helping entrepreneurs, but I can't do any of that from this place of poor health.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, it really just, changed my view on everything that I was doing. And I obviously had to dive deep into pursuing my own health before I could do anything in the realm of my career. So I ended up starting from really the foundation was my mental health and my mindset, which was the first thing I had to deal with because my health wasn't changing. So I had to stop stressing myself about what was happening, because that's
Right.
often a side effect for
Yeah.
people, is to continue to stress their body out as their body's attempting to heal. And
Yeah.
our body is extremely intelligent and intuitive. So if we continue to add stress onto our body, it will only continue to deteriorate. So I actually began pursuing what is now called, longevity principles or biohacking principles, but really focusing on how can we go back to the foundation of health. So nutrition, sleep, everything in from Eastern medicine principles as well, really understanding energy and how that affects both digestion and hormonal health. It also opened up my world to really understanding that women are incredibly different than men, and everything that we've been taught and what's out there is not really what
Designed for us.
for women. Exactly, it's not designed for us at all. So reading or trying to establish a routine based on what you see in the internet isn't really valid, because, well, first of all, we're all bio individual, and second of all,
Hmm.
often built from data from men and being shared publicly because it has some element of trendability or just likability on Instagram. So for me, it was really about how can I actually improve my health in a sustainable way, and not just the short-term symptoms, but really the root cause that's going to give me a foundational base for everything I
Sure.
want to do in the future. And so that was really the turning point for me.
And like how far off were you? Like if you look at the domains like sleep, like nutrition, like physical activity, stress management, like mental health, like how far from where you started did you end up like today with your habits? Can you give any examples?
That's a great question. I mean, I think if somebody looked at me from the outside, they would say you're
Hmm.
incredibly healthy. But
Okay.
when you have symptoms, you
Hmm.
realize that there are really unique things based on only your biology that are being activated and that you need to actually deal with. So, for example, stress was an outsized part of my life at that moment, which actually, in my observation, ended up triggering what I see as a slew of hormonal issues because cortisol is one of the incredibly powerful hormones that impacts women significantly, even more than men, and really breaks down what we call our unique hormonal ecosystem, I would say. Facing that, I realized that everything that I do needs to come from this perspective of how can I balance the hormonal system, which is also incredibly deeply linked to the digestive system. So
Reproductive system, everything. Yeah.
exactly. And the digestive system, if you look at Eastern medicine, is not only based on what you eat, although that's a very important part of it, it's also based on emotions because emotions are often digested through the stomach as well as other organs. But for
Hmm.
me, it was really looking back into the past, into my, let's say, traumas even, and processing certain things, certain memories, certain, moments in my life that I never had a chance to process because I've been so go, go, go my whole life,
Hmm.
and allowing myself the time and the space to actually go through that emotion so that my body would stop being in a place of undigestion, like dysbiosis, and not being able to
Yeah.
digest anything. And so then adding in foundational layers of nutrition, really, taking out gluten, dairy, which, I mean, most people think this is trendy, but it really does have a huge impact on your digestion because it's just something most of us are intolerant to. I would say, especially those raised in North America, because
Hmm.
we have been exposed to a lot of toxins in those products. So for
Right.
me, I also had intolerances related to other products that many people don't see, for example, tuna or lemons and
Hmm.
things like that. So following, let's say, a protocol that you see online that says drink the lemon water in the morning was really not the way that I
Helpful
should,
for you.
yeah,
Yeah.
operating because I had an intolerance to lemons. So for me, it was really this foundational step of understanding myself, getting actual diagnostics, right?
Hmm.
Foundational information that I didn't have before, not just analysis based on my symptoms, and then information based on different sources on how I could actually move the needle and just in 1% day by day. So incorporating more vegetables, detoxifying the liver through more broccoli, more cruciferous vegetables, sleeping more regularly. It's really the basic things that often have the biggest impacts.
Absolutely. And then like as you're talking about this, I hear the line that I saw on so many of your communication pieces, which is longevity is the ultimate compounding strategy because you're just, you're like, okay, emotional health is affecting my digestion, my stress is affecting my hormones and my digestion. And then, it just continues to kind of juggernaut through the different domains of health. And the other thing that you said that I think is one of those topics that we might not spend enough time on in the longevity space is relationship with slow, because you were talking about, go go go, like fast fast fast. I can totally relate to this. There were definitely chapters in my life where it was just I was in a slipstream and then I looked up and I'm like, oops, what happened? And there's something scary about slow, but without slow, I don't think you can heal. Like how has your relationship with slow evolved in your journey?
That's a great question. And I think it's a testament to my integration into Switzerland because
Okay.
Switzerland is probably one of the most, I wouldn't say slow places, but it lets you come back to yourself because of the natural tendency of everything to just be a bit more slow.
Yeah.
It's not a place like New York, and it's not a place like Toronto where I grew up or
Mm,
Madrid where I spent time. You're surrounded by nature, you're surrounded by people with a work life balance, and you're actually able to step back from everything you've been facing to actually take a look at where you are. And that self awareness is really the basis of everything in life. And I also, coach founders, which is one of the things throughout my, wellness journey that I incorporated as an activity because I was so passionate about people taking the time to actually become self aware. Because if you're not self aware about where you are and what's driving you forward, how can you really
Hmm.
move forward sustainably? If you're driven by
Right.
fear, if you're driven by, that need to hustle, right? It's you need to look on the other side and say, what are you running from? And
Right.
so coming and moving to Switzerland really let me actually face some of those things that were hidden deep inside, which came out in the form of, I believe, my personal health challenges and what I now call my hero's journey, which is the fuel to my fire and why I'm in this industry in the first place.
Yeah, I love this perspective around, the difference, of course, between cultures around the world and their relationship to time. But also coming from Toronto to Europe, that the idea of life work balance, I think for me, the connection that I made there is that many Europeans have a life outside of work, and that's what creates the balance. Like there's other interests, there's other, they assign time to relationships and hobbies, where it's just very hard to do that in the North American hustle culture. I mean, I know I'm painting with a really big brush at this point, but I think it's a big influence that I wish more cultures could adopt, is finding that
Absolutely.
tuning.
It's so important.
So you are coming into the wellness world, the longevity world, with a finance lens. So what do you see in longevity right now, and where is the money actually flowing, and what is that telling you?
So, well, first of all, I come with the finance lens, but I come with that even deeper lens for entrepreneurs, I think, which is, first of all, the mindset of emerging markets, which is how can you take your resources as far as possible?
Hmm.
And also, how can you use a variety of different capital instruments to plan ahead for a sustainable long-term growth? So those are the things that I think are very important for businesses to think about. And in terms of where do I see capital, moving towards longevity right now? I mean, as we know, the longevity industry has been growing extremely quickly, and the wellness industry alone, I think, is around three, if not billion, I think it's trillion
I
now.
think it's trillion. Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
growing in an insane pace. And both, and I work at both wellness and longevity, it's an industry that I think capital is only catching up with now.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
say that because most of the longevity investors that I knew or know from a few years back were mainly investing into biotech. And so
Right.
this is a mix of, for those who don't know, science, science, technology, and AI based companies that were really serving a deep core question. So it could be, I don't know, research on cancer or Alzheimer's or genomics or things like that, which we now see expanding,
Hmm.
and the science coming closer to the consumer, and more
Hmm.
investors are actually understanding that this is where the opportunity is today. And
With the
there's,
consumer.
with the consumer, the science is much closer to the consumer, and products and services companies are really bringing the value to the consumer now. It's not so high up in the research, and bringing
Hmm.
products and services to the consumer actually allows investors to understand a bit more about, first of all, trends in the market and psychology
Demand. Yeah.
of behavior, of demand. So you don't need to understand the science of health necessarily to understand where consumption is going. And I think that's where the investor is moving towards. So we see a lot more investment in, of course, science backed and data driven solutions that clients can use regularly to improve their health. So this could be like diagnostics, for example. We're seeing Neco Health or Function Health
Yeah.
with huge financing rounds, because this
Yeah.
is bringing diagnostics to the everyday client, people who don't have access to this, but it can prevent, difficult things in the future. So that's one big trend and I'm seeing, and I think that's where the money's flowing today. And
Hmm.
also more investors are understanding that if they can invest at this layer, they will actually support the development of the economy, whatever economy they're in whatever region, because they're supporting the longevity of the population, first of all,
Right.
and the
Right.
reduction of cost for future healthcare.
That shift is really, that shift is really interesting. And I think, I mean, at least in my own demographic, I see that in like the boom in the menosphere, and like the women's health products, and
Ooh.
yeah, and that sort of thing. But I like understanding the shift between biotech and I think and the consumer, and then I can see those links playing out in real time.
Absolutely. And I would say women's health is a really big sub industry as well right now. And
Hmm.
finally, the not just the science, but the data is slowly starting to catch up where we realized, first of all, our power that we're 50% of the market and 50 if not more percent of the decisions
Yeah,
being made in health, and we need to be served, and we have
yeah,
a whole life cycle, right, of women's life to serve, right, between early adulthood, postpartum, perimenopause, postmenopause.
menopause. Yeah.
This is something that has never really been looked at completely. And I think this is finally the time and the moment for the products and services and the brands that are actually taking a stand and taking us forward as women.
I mean, just being able to have the conversation is already and the conversation drives the demand and shines the light on the pain points. And I can
Absolutely.
imagine also in your health journey, right, when you start talking about anything to do with women's hormones, women's health, reproductive health. I mean, I can remember those conversations with my doctor. They weren't really productive. So and still not. So like we're taking steps, but there's still like many steps to be taken, which I'm happy is at least fueling a part of the consumer space so that there are solutions that are being made. So just changing gears to your longevity gear. So how did you get to Power Cube? Because you had started to address your health, and then all of a sudden you started building in longevity. So connect that dot for us.
Absolutely. So as I was dealing with my own health issues and kind of contemplating this shift into, jumping into the health and wellness industry, I began advising and actually angel investing in women founders, female
Okay.
founders, and a few of the brands that I was advising were in women's health and wellness. Again, just as we were discussing, realizing how important it was to support women in a different way than men. And
Sure.
from there, I was really contemplating how, founders need to be supported as well, because that was what I was working in, and understanding that the outsized requirements of a founder in terms of their energy, in terms of their performance, in terms of their longevity is incredibly different. And so I
Yes.
started thinking about this. And, when you become really passionate about something and you're, actively, talking to peers in your network and industry and finding a way to build in this sphere, I met actually two women who were already building in the space. And so we kind of came together, and one of the women had already the idea for the name and was creating this concept on her own. And we fused together, the three of us, kind of our three concepts of what a unique performance and longevity club should look like,
Could.
based
Yeah.
on our needs and based on what we believe is actually an underserved population in Geneva. And so that's kind of how I got pulled into building in the performance and longevity world, and really kind of transitioning from in the investor side to the operator side.
That I've lived in the operator side, so I know how exciting, but it is a roller coaster journey. There's a
Absolutely.
whole lot of work there.
Oh yeah.
And like this was like I guess this was one of the first longevity spaces in Geneva of its kind, because you were really bringing everything together. You were bringing the pillars of lifestyle medicine together. How has the market evolved since? Like, are there more power cubes? Are there more copycat power cubes? Like, what is longevity looking like?
So, with our unique perspective, PowerCube was really envisioned to offer a 360 space in a non clinical way for people to take care of their health. So, just as a quick summary, we offer diagnostics, personalized consultations, longevity science backed group classes, a biohacking suite with 4 different modalities, including red light therapy, hydrogen therapy, flotation, cryotherapy. We
Hmm.
had access to experts. You had a full longevity nutrition based cafe sourced, in
Wonderful.
partnership with a local cafe. So we had all mainly local ingredients and a longevity nutritionist who helped design the menu alongside ourselves. We incorporated wearable memberships and were one of the first to do so. And we even had CGM monitors available for certain clients
Wow.
who wanted to do deeper understanding of their,
Energy.
relationship to,
Yeah.
to continuous glucose. And
Hmm.
of course, built a huge community around how can you support your health in this foundational way. So bringing this very complete perspective, we were the first to do this in Switzerland for sure. There are others, and we really wanted to democratize access to this, because
Hmm.
what we see in Switzerland and even in Europe are, the Chenot, the Clinique La Prairie, the Clinique Les Alpes, or the hotels offering longevity services.
Hmm.
But what most of those spaces do is they offer you a retreat or a getaway from your life, which you then take advantage of and you stay for a week or two, but it's not your day to day. You haven't yet
Right.
incorporated a true longevity lifestyle in your day. And as a
Hmm.
high performer founder, someone who's incredibly busy, you need to find those tools to support you throughout your weeks and your days
Sustain it. Yeah.
and sustain it for the long term. So for us, it was really about creating that and offering everything that we would need as clients. And today there's still not one specific place doing everything we're doing. There are, of course, many different fitness studios and medical spas offering certain, red light therapy or individual therapies that we were offering. But our unique client was someone who's very discerning and very knowledgeable about what they want and need and how they feel. And what we could offer was also the demonstrable impact that things were moving towards their goals, right? With the diagnostics, with the wearables, and that is really what people need. And what one of the things that I learned was truly to be able to give people what they want in a wellness space, you need to be able to show that what they're doing is working. And people often forget that, because if they don't see
Hmm.
results, the client won't come back, right?
Right, right. And for me, like this has always been a missing link in the fitness journey, like the deep dive on goal setting. Why are you here? How, like, why wouldn't you take a business approach to your health, right? Like, why are you here? How can we measure it? Let's measure it. Like, here's your proposed program. Let's test it. Let's iterate it, and on you go. But that really takes, I think that takes the kind of person that is has a deep identity connection with, I am a healthy person and I am really committed to this journey, which I think they're that group of people are growing now more than ever. But it, like, so much of your character and your habits are confronted when you start addressing your health.
Absolutely. And I was even going to say, most of us are only really addressing our health as a body or superficially first, right? It's like, how can I look good? How can I gain muscle? And then when you hit that first layer, you start to go deeper. And so we all pass through this kind of inception point of just taking care of our body for the superficial element. And now we're really seeing this requirement and desire to not just look good, but really feel good, like a
Yeah.
deeply, the
Deep health.
consistent, and
Yeah.
sustainable feeling of I feel well.
Yeah, and I think also, like, the aesthetic as a priority shifts at different life stages. Like at some point when health shifts, then so does the priority and focus. So like midlife, I think I would just throw that out there as a guess. It really does shift from purely aesthetics to function and preventing risk factors. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about what's happening in terms of trends. Like what's new and exciting that you're seeing in longevity right now, and what would you categorize as noise?
So, I mean, I think one important underlying element is that consumers are really becoming more discerning.
Hmm.
And I'm someone who really believes in behavioral science and psychology. And so following, reading not just the news, but really kind of going deeper into what is trending to understand behavior of consumers. So you see the era of just wellness trends slowly fizzling out and people actually questioning where the science is behind certain things. And that is really important. So that's very
Yeah.
positive. One thing we obviously cannot glide over is this rise of injectables, peptides, following, of course, the GLP-1 industry rise. And I think this is something that is very quickly going to expand. And we see it already expanding globally within our networks, but also the regulation in the US catching up to how fast the market is moving. And it's
Mm-hmm.
actually at first quite surprising because you realize that there are significant risks associated with injecting your body with a substance that you
Something. Yeah.
can personally identify, right? You have to have so much trust in the company, in the brand, in the
That's making it.
provider
Yeah.
who's making it to know that this is going to work, first of all, and that it's safe. And what's also really interesting, I think, is people are ready to trust something without understanding their body. Because for me, one person's reaction to a peptide and another person's reaction are going to be completely different based on their genetics, based on many things like their current state, their stress, their nervous system, so that really plays a massive role. But I am interested in understanding, even deeper why this industry has exploded now. And I think it comes back to, is this a long-term and sustainable industry, or is this going to be noise? Because in the GLP-1 industry, what we're really seeing is that people are able to take care of a health issue that they were not able to handle before on their own. And that created a fantastic outcome of them losing the weight that was causing them to have significant consequences down
Lifestyle
the line,
diseases. Yeah.
lifestyle diseases. So we see that as positive. However, the masses that are using GLP-1s for losing 2 to 3 kilos are having significant consequences down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Do we discern between the client that actually needs peptides like insulin, like GLP-1s, like other peptides, and just the experimentation, the biohacker who's just here to test everything? Because it's an access problem. And I think that is what's creating noise. It's creating this element of, this is just a short-term win for me, and it's not really necessary, right? So I'm looking at this industry of, okay, what is, for the GLP-1 industry, for example, what are the adjacent brands and partners that are actually going to be needed to support the clients that use GLP-1? Because you're going to need, you're going to be needing knowledge on how to strength train. You're going to need to know how to get off GLP-1s, how to take care of your, potentially your liver to detoxify any, significant consequences, or you're going to have to take care of your mental health, and be able to actually invest in yourself after taking GLP-1. So the whole process, right? Skincare, right? Volume loss, all of these other impacts that happen. We need an ecosystem around the GLP-1,
Yep.
companies. And that's what I see as really coming out as the emerging longevity economy around this industry. And around peptides, I really see it as, how do we create an access for people who really need the access, not just to to have short-term trends.
It's the same question, right? Like it's the same question for GLP-1 as for peptides. It's
Absolutely, absolutely.
not
And so
not the amateur, not the hobby, not the nice to have, those who need it versus those who are dabbling.
exactly. And also I see, what I really see is the kind of the brands that are in the longevity industry now that are closer to the consumer, they're really big on educating the consumer, because the
Mm-hmm.
consumer is still doing their best to understand the
Mm-hmm.
changes in this industry, right? So we don't really know what the consumer knows, and we need to start to educate them so that they can learn what is actually needed for their body, rather than just letting Instagram or news decide for them.
Educate you. Yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
I think, there's a whole lot to unpack in terms of what you just said. And one of the one of the things that I think is really interesting about GLP-1s, and we've got in the collective core team, there is a behavioral scientist, Dr. Lou Atkinson, and I'm always talking to any company that's designing a solution for consumer. I'm like, do you have behavioral science baked in to your user experience, to your onboarding, like, or are you just kind of coming up with this as an afterthought? Because if you're not basing your solution that requires adherence with any sort of nod to behavioral science, I think it's really irresponsible and unfortunate, and it's setting people up to fail. So
Absolutely.
that's one thing. And then Lou, and there's another doctor, she's an obesity medicine doctor. Her name is Ritva Matanen. she's identified this problem that you also spoke about, which is, in this GLP-1 ecosystem, how do you create holistic solutions for patients on GLP-1s? And the issue that she sees is the fact that if you go into the whole coaching and fitness coaching community, the standard of education is so low for those fitness coaches. Unfortunately, most medical practitioners don't feel comfortable with the handoff. So she's trying to solve for that with a whole suite of courses designed by a medical professional for the fitness professional that she'd like to hand off to. So I think
So important.
that's super important. The other thing with peptides is I have to go to an aesthetic doctor for HRT for my
Mhm.
menopause symptoms because my physician, my home physician, won't prescribe it to me. So when I go to my aesthetic doctor and do my bloods and that sort of thing, we were having a conversation about peptides because it's a hot topic. And what he said is that he was like, he's so curious why people are so willing to embrace peptides that don't have much scientific research or efficacy. And there was so much resistance to the COVID vaccine that did have it. Like, I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. What an incredible point. And I think it is that somewhere in our human nature, we want the easy, we want it to be a pill. We want it to be a shot. Just give me a shot and make it, whatever it is, go away. And
Mhm.
that's what peptides promise. And we want to believe it. We want to believe it badly.
I think that's very true. And it's a naturally human characteristic, of course. And we're so privy to shortcuts. I mean, even think about Excel shortcuts, all of these little shortcuts in our day, like cutting diagonally on a walk. So you
Hacks. Yeah.
exactly. It's just part of our reality, but I think part of it is still understanding like this is a layer that is optimizing your health. So if the foundation isn't there, and we really see that today, those peptides are going to still hide those roots really causes and the symptoms you might not see, but that doesn't mean they're not there. And I've worked with a few microbiome specialists who say if you have that dysbiosis, right, the microbiome, and even with Moritz and
Mm-hmm.
Ravan, we spoke about it as well. It's really high performers are covering up this root issue with a peptide that they're still going to have to deal with later on when they stop the peptide. So, as a function of what we know about our bodies and the industry, it's really about, again, coming back to the foundation. Like, what is the root cause of some of the things you're facing?
Well, I think that that's beautiful. And I think, people are saying this all, or more and more people are saying this all the time, like, don't major in the minors. And that's fundamentally like peptides when your house isn't in order, when you haven't addressed your sleep, when you haven't addressed your nutrition, physical activity, emotional health, spiritual health,
Mhm.
mental health. Why? First, do those things. And unfortunately, there's no shortcuts in those things. And that's why I think people fundamentally avoid them.
100%. And to talk about something else other than peptides, just in trends, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
neurotech is something that's really quickly growing because finally there are actual solutions and diagnostics for our mental health, right? And I think that's one thing that we're really going to see in different formats, whether it's services or products that are helping us to understand our brains, because that
Yeah,
has obviously been a bit of a Pandora's box before. We didn't know anything
literally.
about.
Yeah.
And now we're starting to understand, okay, how can we actually optimize our focus, our performance, our memory, and actually help our nervous system in and of itself to recover from certain things, maybe even in the past, right? And that all sits in the brain as well. So it's really fascinating as an industry, I think, too.
Like things that really make us better humans. Like once we have those foundational pillars, there are real things to build on. I think that's the thing that I'm most excited about in longevity, not the hacks, the fact that once you've put in the work, you can continue to get better if you pursue the journey. That's really
Absolutely.
cool.
Absolutely.
What are the biggest opportunities that you're seeing for founders and operators right now?
Amazing question. And I think it also leads into what I talk about so much, which is my passion for partnerships and ecosystem building. So, for founders and operators in the health and wellness and longevity industry, the market is finally at this point where it's maturing and people aren't competing as much. And there's really this ability to see opportunities for collaboration from every angle. So for any founder and operator that I work with, or in general and friends with and ambassador for,
Hmm.
I always suggest to look at who are the companies that are adjacent to them today who can support them in some way. And that could be for a newly established venture, right? To help them understand product market fit, to help them build trust, or for established ventures to actually evolve into combined communities, or to support with building out different protocols, right? This is now where the industry is going because the infrastructure of the actual industry is finally becoming more mature, both in wellness, but also in longevity. So I'm seeing the rise of partnerships, and we generally see the rise of collaboration in this industry so much more. And partnerships have often been a byproduct of, a successful company, already
Yeah.
having revenues. But I often suggest first look at how your ecosystem can be set up and who can actually support you, because those companies and brands can actually help you scale in a very resource efficient way.
I really love that this is your perspective. And I a big part of my professional career has been in the fitness sector. And I
Mhm.
can give you a very specific example of a gap in ecosystem building, because I think that if you give it, 5 or 6 years, longevity is going to eat fitness, because fitness looks at itself through a straw from the consumer perspective. From my perspective, fitness is one piece of my wellness pie, but my fitness app doesn't integrate with other apps or products that I'm using to support my health journey. There is not really a space right now that does plug all of those things in. I appreciate that would have to be like the most open API of all time, but this is like it from my perspective as a consumer. Fitness is just a piece of my pie, and there isn't really good examples in fitness of truly building an ecosystem. And I feel like a lot of companies look at their products and problems through that in the straw standpoint, and not from the, okay, if my customer is solving for this, what else might they be solving for? And that's what you're talking about in the adjacencies, right? It's like, who else could I work with that may enhance the success of my product or service, because they're also stacking.
Mhm.
So like, what does a good ecosystem look like?
It's a fantastic question, and I love to talk about this. So, I actually wrote my master's thesis on ecosystems, entrepreneurship
Wonderful. Yeah.
ecosystems, which I think are kind of the basis of where my thesis around ecosystem comes from. So, there's actually Eisenberg's entrepreneurship ecosystem model, which incorporates
Okay.
6 domains around an ecosystem. And this is specific around entrepreneurship ecosystem, but very
Okay.
much applies to businesses. So there's access to human capital, regulation and leadership, financial capital, institutional support, venture friendly markets, and I think conducive culture. So if we look at
Hmm.
the longevity industry from that lens, it very much applies. So the conducive culture right now towards the industry, so businesses are finally able to come down to the consumer. We see the support institutions that are being built around in terms of universities, but that also is the same lens that you need to look at your business through. So looking at the partners in your immediate, surroundings, so your
Hmm.
clients, your suppliers, your
Hmm.
regulators, the producers of the product,
Yep.
anyone, any stakeholder,
Yep.
and beyond, right? And then peers. I think people
Yeah.
look at peers as competitors rather than peers. And I think the industry has only advancing because we have peers. So look at
Right.
your peers as collaborators, because we're all facing
Absolutely.
similar issues with
Yep.
regulators, with institutional support, with finance. So if you can look at your peers and understand how you can support each other and where there is an ability to plug and play, you will be able to actually move forward much faster. And this is something that I see with the companies that now I'm, working with, because most are actually scaling through partnerships. And it's just the natural way that the ecosystem starts to be built out for each of these businesses is they say, okay, who is going to support my product and services? Who needs this the most? So, for example, for a longevity skincare brand that I work with, that I love, Adipo, they work with wellness clinics, longevity clinics, and estheticians worldwide because they have
Mm-hmm.
real science-backed products. So
Right.
what do estheticians need? They want their clients to
Good
believe that they
products.
understand skincare, they understand regeneration of the cells. So a product that's going to provide them of this credibility is also something that they need. So how do you look at your ecosystem as what can you give to the people around you, right?
Yeah.
And that how can you provide value, and that will also allow you to provide value to more people to actually access a whole new client base. So that's kind of how I think about, building out an ecosystem. But again, as we were saying before, it needs to start really at the foundational level of your company, the first stage of building your company. And this evolves as you grow, and you need to revisit it every 1 to 2 years, but it should be there as a foundational element.
It's part of your strategy. It's rooted in stakeholders, and I love the example of the skincare that you brought up, because of course, like in aesthetic clinics, like there's an immediate opportunity for secondary spend, and also an extra benefit of whatever treatment that you just had that you could carry over at home, right? So it's just like a continuation of the value that you've already invested in. The one thing that I think that companies that are starting to work with partnerships miss the boat on is managing partnerships. Like, I talk about that because I think it's underestimated.
I think this is a topic that I was just talking to someone about yesterday, so I'm nodding very actively. But I think because, and I'll say why, and then I'll talk about it. I think because partnerships have only become something that people are looking at as truly valuable today, that it's just starting to be formed. And I think, especially in this industry, right, we're not competing
Hmm.
as much, we're not working in silos as much. We're really building collaboratively and supporting each other. That there's this one off transactional element, but also this resource scarce element of partnerships.
Hmm.
Is that, so partnership is transactional. So you do the transaction and then you come back for the next transaction. That's how most
Yeah.
people think about it. But if you
Yeah.
think about it from the perspective of, okay, how can this person build long term value and credibility for my brand?
Relational.
And
Yeah.
for me, exactly. And how can I support them? It allows for you to create a resource, right? For yourself to learn from, someone to learn from in your adjacent community, but also opens you up to a whole new perspective that you might not be seeing. So you really need to kind of go deeper and understand your partner and your partnership and the reason behind it. And if it's only transactional, this might not be the perfect partner for you. This is a client, right? So what I say and what I mean about the resource element is that most startups are resource poor, both in terms of time and capital. So they think that investing in other things is more important than partner management, and relationship management is the core of our existence.
Yeah.
You could say. So if we looked at it from that perspective of the more deeper relationships we're able to build, the better and more sustainable our companies, but also our communities and our society would be, because we will more deeply understand and empathize and be able to support those around us. And I think it's maybe a uniquely female element to think like that,
I
or
mean,
at
we
least
commune, right? It's what we do.
I think it comes very naturally to us to think about
Yeah.
like supporting and communicating with our community, even our
Yeah.
relationships, right? Our friends, our family. And men don't have that natural tendency to check in. And
Right.
it's something that I think is really going to be supported with AI as well, because check-ins and those things can be
Can be
automated, and
automated.
then the human element can be added in that will support those relationships. But one really powerful thing here is that your partners can become your community. And we're seeing the rise of kind of this in real life trends again, which is to meet in real life, to support your community, and to build communities in real life. We're tired of the digital world. And so, how
Yeah.
can you actually transition your relationships and your partnerships from just kind of being in the ethos and the ether and coming
Hmm.
down into in real life and actually creating a community with this group?
Human, meaningful. Yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
like we're in a loneliness epidemic. So like if you look at if you look at the reported health epidemics from the WHO and just try to solve for those things, I think that could be a solid like impact focus for businesses.
100%.
Okay, so be the boss of the world. A founder comes to you with capital, like this is already a dream, with capital and conviction to build the ideal longevity venture. Where would you tell them to start?
So based on 10 years of experience in finance, impact finance, working with companies, I actually built a framework around
Mm-hmm.
my view called the architecture method that lives on my website that both
Okay,
new companies and established companies can take to see where they
wonderful.
stand in terms of where they should start. And for me, it's really about what are you building and can for whom and
Mhm.
what point are you at? Why is it specifically unique? And can you explain this in 5 minutes or less? If you cannot do those things, you really need to ask yourself, like, why do you think you're ready to deploy capital right now, right? And then the kind of deeper question for me is to get into what we were talking about earlier, which is understanding if this person is self aware enough as a person to be an entrepreneur if they haven't been already, because that is a challenge in and of itself. And so there are other important questions that I would ask them to see how do you see yourself as an
Fit
entrepreneur?
for
Why are you
purpose. Yeah.
creating this business? Do you actually see this as a problem? Are you only solving it because you've seen someone else solve it? Is this a problem you've faced? Are your peers, interested in the solution? Sometimes we see a great idea because we're connected to, everyone everywhere all the time, and we
Yep.
think that we should build that, but actually this isn't necessary in the world, and your maybe desire to be seen and successful is actually what's running the show here. So this really important element of like, what is it? Can you
Yeah.
explain it? Why is it unique? And then who are you to be building this? And kind of go deeper and what would you bring to this? And actually, what challenges do you think you'll have building this?
I love that. It's like, is your concept fit for purpose, and are you fit for purpose? And if you can't pass through those gates, don't start.
Absolutely. And then if we pass those gates, I ask them to kind of build out what their business within an ecosystem would look like, because I think that's a defining element of like, are there actually people building in this space? Who are the peers? How would you create partnerships? How could you scale with nothing, even if you have everything to scale?
Sure. I really love this perspective of it's like your concept, now build ecosystem. Love it,
Exactly.
love it. Okay, so at the collective, this is our last question we like to ask everyone, just because it's so important to shine the light on people doing great work. So, is there a woman or women in your network that you'd like to amplify? Who is she, and what is she doing?
Absolutely. I am a huge supporter of women. And after working many years at emerging markets, I wanted to support women because we receive less than 3% of venture capital dollars as
Yes.
entrepreneurs. So I'm so passionate about women in general. So two women that I support, the founders of the Sabi, which is a women's health and wellness company, Anna and Hillary, they're fantastic. They've built a whole line of products to support the women's health life cycle, and they both have 5 kids between them. So they're
Wow.
superhuman. And I'm
Yes.
just so inspired by women like them. So
Yeah.
proud to support them. One of my best friends, Sofia Tulubova, she actually is also an advisor in tech, raising capital for companies all over the world in AI and technology, also in wellness, and raising money also from the Gulf, which is a big area where we can get a lot of
Yeah.
capital. Incredibly inspiring. We also co invest together. Jacqueline Kennard, who you know,
Yes.
curator,
Wonderful woman. Yeah.
her huge inspiration to me. I'm so thankful to have met her. Helen Shamas, a friend of mine who's creating a Swiss biotech skincare company. I'm so inspired by her. I think she's just doing amazing things and solving a problem she really faced herself and bringing it to the masses, which I think is super important, and doing it with her husband and partner. So I think that's very inspiring. But I could keep going on and on and on.
I love that you could keep going on and on. Those are amazing shout
My
outs, and
mom,
we'll
she's an
yeah,
amazing
thanks, mom.
human design coach and someone who's inspired me to look deeper at the layers beyond just what we see in ourselves and how we can build that self-awareness about who we are and how we can bring it into our day-to-day. So I really think that there's inspiring women all around us if we just open our eyes.
Absolutely. And thank you for such an eloquent and detailed shout out. I want as many of
Pleasure.
those as I can get. And thank you for your time and your perspective and wisdom. I took so much out of this podcast. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thanks for listening to Connecting the Dots. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, share it with someone who'd enjoy it too. You can find all of our episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you follow the show, leave a rating. It helps more people discover our work. Until next time, keep connecting the dots and keep building the future you want to see.